After Ubisoft acquired the Prince of Persia license, they began conceptualizing a game in 2001. The original series creator Jordan Mechner was asked by Ubisoft to help Ubisoft Montreal with the development of the game. Mechner will be involved in the game's design and would write the game's story. In 2003 the game was announced as The Sands of Time, and in late 2003 the game was released. For this review I will be looking at the PlayStation 2 version and see if it still holds up almost 20 years after its initial release.
You may wonder who I am and why I say this. Sit down, and I will tell you a tale like none that you have ever heard.
The first thing I did was switch to progressive scan mode, which makes it look amazing for a PlayStation 2 game. And it's great that even the PAL region gets this, as they are usually left out. In the game you play as a prince who goes to visit the Sultan of Azad together with his father Shahraman, while being accompanied by an army. What has piqued their interests is the Sands of Time, which holds magical powers. While making his way through the palace, the prince finds the Dagger of Time. And once they are ready to hand over the Maharaja's daughter Farah to the Sultan as a gift, the vizier reveals his true colors and tricks the prince into releasing the Sands of Time, which turns everyone into possessed sand monsters, except for the vizier, Farah and the prince, who manage to escape unscathed. The prince teams up with Farah, and while they don't like each other at first, they eventually fall in love, though Farah ends up stealing the dagger from him, which ends up costing her her life, as she falls to her death. Vizier reappears and offers him eternal life if he hands over the dagger, but the prince doesn't accept his offer and instead stabs the hourglass with the dagger. This causes time to rewind, to before the assault on Maharaja's palace. The prince still remembers everything that has happened and goes to warn Farah. After telling his story, they are ambushed by the vizier, who is out to kill the prince. Vizier stands no chance and is killed by the prince, who gives the dagger to Farah. After that they part ways, ending the journey of the prince. The game's story is certainly entertaining and is filled with some great moments that encourage you to keep playing, but the story is not too memorable or special, so overall the story has a great presentation, but the plot itself is nothing to cry home about.
I'm sorry.
While playing this game, it's clear that the Assassin's Creed series was heavily influenced by this title, as you play from a third-person perspective and do lots of platforming, mostly running along walls. These platforming sections are easy at first, but can become a bit more challenging as you progress through the game, as these sections are filled with deadly traps. This is where your rewind power comes in, which allows you to rewind time to correct your missteps and try again, which is a great addition that removes any frustration, as you always have multiple attempts to try a platforming challenge. And this is easily the standout feature of Sands of Time. Every now and then you come across some large environmental puzzles that are not too challenging, but still force you to think a bit before you can venture forward. And I like these since they add some gameplay variety. Aside from platforming and solving puzzles, you will be fighting the sand monsters. The combat is fun at first, but quickly becomes repetitive as you don't have many different combos, and these sections drag on as enemies just keep spawning in all the time. Not to mention that you need to stab each enemy with the Dagger of Time, as that is the only way to permanently kill them, making for some repetitive gameplay loops. So I was personally never looking forward to the combat sections and was just glad when they were over. The parts where you are accompanied by Farah are even more annoying, as she can easily be killed by the sand monsters, ending with the game over if you fail to protect her. And at one time I encountered a glitch where she constantly decided to walk into a deadly pit, resulting in a game over. But luckily after reloading the last save file, this glitch did not reoccur. The most frustrating part for me was during the boss fight against the prince's father, as lots of sand monsters spawn in, and you can only stand a chance to defeat the father once all of them are dealt with. Once it's one-on-one, the fight is not too bad, but when you're completely surrounded by enemies you can easily get comboed to death. Not to mention that you also have to make sure that Farah doesn't get killed. So after a lot of retries I was extremely happy when I finally beat the boss, so I could move on. To heal your wounds you can drink healing water from fountains and pools, and by exploring you can find sand that increases your power, and discovering magic fountains increases your maximum health. The sands you collect from enemies can be used to use the previously mentioned rewind ability, as well as to slow down time during combat sections, though I did not find that ability all that useful and only used it a handful of times. What is another useful ability though is the ability to freeze enemies, making it much easier to deal with large groups of enemies and take individuals down without much trouble. The final fight against Vizier is somewhat disappointing, as it is nowhere near as challenging as the fight against Shahraman, and throughout the final fight you just repeat the same thing over and over again, making for a very repetitive, uninteresting final boss that fails to leave a lasting impression. Graphically, this game has aged incredibly well, as characters and environments look fairly detailed and are even better in the progressive mode. And while they look great, I would have liked to see more variety in terms of environments, as the areas all look quite similar, making it hard to tell them apart. Furthermore, the progressive mode seems to cause a bit of slowdown during the combat sections, though it could also just be my copy of the game. The soundtrack perfectly captures the atmosphere of the game, and the voice acting is serviceable, though the volume of the voice lines is so low that it can be hard to hear what the characters are saying, making it harder to follow the story.
The best is yet to come.
Overall, I had a great time playing The Sands of Time. While the story is not that memorable, it is still entertaining and should keep you motivated to play it all the way through the end. The combat can get repetitive at times, but the overall package is excellent, as there is a nice pace throughout the game, as you usually go from a platforming section to solving a puzzle, followed by a combat section. It is interesting to see how Ubisoft adapted features of this game in their even more successful Assassin's Creed series. Now that I have played this game, I am eager to check out the other games in the Prince of Persia series. And if you haven't played this classic yet, I highly advise you to do so, as it is a great Ubisoft game that is filled with creativity, something the company is lacking nowadays.